What if I told you that the greatest distraction in your life might be the lives of other people? That every moment spent watching, comparing, or judging someone else might be the very thing keeping you from becoming who you are truly meant to be? We live in a world obsessed with everyone else, but maybe the freedom, the clarity, the strength you're searching for isn't out there. Maybe it starts with coming home to yourself. There is something quietly corrosive about comparison. It works in secret, slipping unnoticed into the mind, gently shaping how we see others and, more dangerously, how we see ourselves. It begins innocently enough. You observe someone's success, their talents, their appearance, their achievements. You may even admire them, applaud them, but admiration can quickly turn to measurement, and measurement to discontent. What was once simple appreciation becomes a subtle recalibration of your own worth. Their strength becomes your weakness. Their joy becomes your deficiency. Their path becomes the standard by which you begin to judge your own. And without even realizing it, you are no longer living your own life. You are performing a version of someone else's. Comparison is not just a thief of joy, as is often said, it is a thief of identity. It pulls your gaze away from what is real and personal and presses it against the window of someone else's world. It tempts you to believe that the story you have been given is somehow lacking, that your gifts are too small, your pace too slow, your purpose less meaningful. And once that lie settles in the heart, it becomes hard to silence. You begin to bend yourself into the shape of what you think you should be. You begin to craft a version of yourself that fits expectations you were never meant to carry. The tragedy of comparison is not only that it makes us miserable, but that it distracts us from becoming who we truly are. A person cannot grow while constantly looking sideways. A seed does not sprout by examining the plant beside it. It grows by sinking its roots deep, by reaching for light in its own quiet, unseen way. So too the soul. You cannot flourish while constantly scanning for validation in someone else's success. You cannot become whole while wishing you had someone else's gifts, someone else's calling, someone else's life. Worse still, comparison breeds two dangerous things, envy and pride. Envy when you feel you have fallen short of another, pride when you believe you have surpassed them. Both are distortions. Envy twists another's blessing into your burden. Pride turns your blessing into a weapon. Neither allows you to see others or yourself clearly. Envy is not simply sadness at another's gain. It is resentment that they gained at all. And pride is not merely satisfaction in your own progress. It is a false sense of superiority because someone else has not come as far. Both lead you away from humility, from gratitude, from truth. The human soul was not made to compare, it was made to grow. And growth is a deeply personal journey. It cannot be charted by the progress of others. The moment you start comparing yourself, you begin living a story that isn't yours. You abandon your unique path, your inner calling, your hidden work. And even if you succeed in mimicking someone else, what you have gained will be hollow, because it was never meant for you. There is no peace to be found in comparison. Only anxiety, restlessness, and dissatisfaction. To escape its grip, one must look inward, not in selfishness, but in honesty. What is your calling? What is your burden? What is the task set before you today, regardless of what others are doing? These are the questions that lead to clarity. These are the questions that return you to yourself. Because until you stop measuring your worth by others, you will never discover the quiet strength of your own soul. There is a peculiar tendency in human nature to believe that growth happens by accident, as though simply passing through time will make us wiser, kinder, stronger. But growth is not a passive unfolding. It is an act of the will, a deliberate and ongoing turning of the soul toward what is good. This turning cannot happen while the mind is preoccupied with the movements of others. It cannot begin while attention is scattered across the noise of comparison, judgment, or distraction. Real transformation begins when a person pauses, turns inward, and examines their own heart with honesty and courage. The work of the soul is not glamorous. It is quiet, often hidden, and at times deeply uncomfortable. It requires you to face your weaknesses without excuses, to confront your habits without distraction, and to acknowledge where you have fallen short, not in comparison to others, but in comparison to what you are made to become. This kind of self-focus is not prideful, it is humble. It does not ask, how do I look next to others? But am I walking in truth? It is not interested in appearance, but in alignment with what is right, with what is true, with what is eternal. Many people spend their lives watching others, trying to gauge their own progress by the successes or failures they see around them. They worry whether they are behind, whether they have enough, whether they are doing life correctly according to the vague expectations of the world. But growth does not answer to the crowd. It answers to the conscience. It takes place in the quiet decisions made when no one is watching. It takes root in the hours given to reflection, prayer, study, and repentance. It is born not from comparison, but from conviction. When you are constantly looking outward, your energy is drained by things you cannot control. You may become anxious about others' opinions, envious of their accomplishments, or consumed by their faults. But none of these concerns help you grow. They only distract you from the real work at hand, the shaping of your own character, the refining of your own thoughts, the cultivation of your own strength. To focus on yourself in this way is not to ignore others. It is to recognize that you can only serve them well if you have first done the work within. Growth requires solitude, not the absence of people, but the presence of inner stillness. In that stillness, you can ask the questions that matter. What drives me? What do I fear? Where am I resisting truth? What habits are shaping me, and what kind of person are they making me into? These questions do not offer quick answers. They are slow, searching, and often unsettling. But they are the soil in which real maturity grows. You cannot rely on the mirror of public opinion to show you who you are. That mirror is warped, ever-changing, and often blind to what matters most. Only through inward attention, steady, honest, and brave, can you begin to see clearly. Only then can you make changes that are deep and lasting, not performative or fleeting. The world may applaud surface achievements, but the soul is not moved by applause. It is moved by integrity, by discipline, by a quiet loyalty to what is right. There is no shortcut to personal growth. It cannot be borrowed from others, and it cannot be rushed. It is a long obedience in the same direction, a gradual becoming that demands patience, effort, and grace. To grow, you must be willing to look inward, not to indulge yourself, but to refine yourself, not to fixate, but to form. This is the path of wisdom, the path of freedom, the path that leads not only to change, but to depth, to substance, to the kind of life that is not easily shaken. There is a subtle kind of self-deception in judging others. It feels like clarity. It feels like insight. One might believe they are simply observing truth, making sense of the world, calling out what is wrong. But beneath that surface lies something far more evasive, a refusal to turn that same light inward. It is easier, after all, to name the flaws in someone else than to confront the quiet rebellion within one's own heart. The more we fix our gaze on the failings of others, the less we are required to reckon with ourselves. Judging others is not merely a failure of charity, It is a failure of attention. The one who spends his time critiquing another's choices, habits, or direction inevitably leaves his own unchecked. It creates the illusion of action, the sense that one is doing something productive, defending what is right, upholding standards. But often, this judgment is a smokescreen. It deflects the discomfort of looking honestly at what needs changing in one's own life. It allows pride to masquerade as righteousness. It replaces repentance with superiority, and while the gaze is fixed outward, the soul quietly atrophies. When a person becomes preoccupied with the faults of others, they begin to believe that those faults justify their own stagnation. If he is worse than I am, if she is more broken, then I am fine as I am. This line of reasoning offers temporary relief from the hard work of self-examination. It dulls the ache of conscience with the balm of comparison. But it is a shallow peace. It cannot last. For sooner or later, reality presses in. The mask falls. The distractions run out. And what remains is the self, unattended, unexamined, unchanged. There is also a peculiar blindness that comes with judging others. The more one indulges in criticism, the harder it becomes to see clearly. Faults grow exaggerated, motives are assumed, nuance is lost, and in that distortion, truth is sacrificed. The person being judged becomes an object, a caricature, someone to correct rather than someone to understand. And as one becomes more skilled in criticism, one becomes less skilled in compassion. The heart hardens even as the voice becomes more confident. Yet a hardened heart cannot grow. It can only fracture. The irony is that those who judge most harshly often do so out of fear. Fear of their own failure, fear of being exposed, fear of being inadequate. To cast the spotlight on another is to keep it away from oneself. But such fear left unchecked breeds bitterness. It creates a posture of defensiveness rather than humility, of scorn rather than sorrow. And in this state, learning stops. Growth halts. Because the person who always sees the problem outside themselves will never take the steps needed to change within. To look inward, to confront one's own flaws, to confess them and work to overcome them, this is the harder path. It is slower, quieter, less noticed. It brings no applause and often no immediate reward. But it is the path of integrity. It leads not to the hollow satisfaction of being better than someone else, but to the deep and lasting peace of being better than you were yesterday. It teaches you to be patient with others, not because you excuse their wrong, but because you understand your own. There is no transformation in the life that always looks outward for what is wrong. Real growth begins in the silence, in the quiet acknowledgement of what needs healing, what needs humbling, what needs refining. To turn inward is not to turn away from the world. It is to prepare oneself to re-enter it with clarity, grace, and strength. Until then, all outward judgment is little more than noise, echoing from a soul too distracted to listen to its own conscience. Peace is not the absence of conflict around us, but the quiet order within us. Many people spend their lives trying to adjust the world to their liking, controlling outcomes, managing impressions, fixing others, believing that if everything outside of them were just right, then the inner world would finally rest. But peace does not flow from the outer to the inner. It begins deep within, rooted in how we align ourselves to truth, how we accept what we cannot change, and how we live faithfully in the midst of things that are not as they should be. The desire to control others is often disguised as care, concern, or responsibility. We think if we can change them, how they act, how they think, how they speak, then we'll be more comfortable, more secure. We tie our emotional state to their behavior, allowing our joy, our composure, our sense of purpose to be constantly dictated by someone else's choices. But this only breeds frustration. People are not ours to shape. They are not machines to be programmed or problems to be solved. They are complex, free, and flawed, just as we are. And the moment we believe our peace depends on their change, we have surrendered something sacred. There is a quiet tyranny in this posture of control. It pulls us out of our own life and places our energy into the realm of what we were never meant to govern. You cannot force someone to grow. You cannot dictate how others see you, or what they say, or how they respond. These things lie beyond your reach. To fixate on them is to invite endless anxiety, because the terms of peace are always shifting. The person who builds their serenity on someone else's behavior builds it on sand. True peace is rooted in alignment, not with circumstances, but with what is good and true, regardless of them. It is the deep stillness that comes from knowing you are doing what is right, even if no one notices. It is the strength of not needing to win every argument, not needing to prove your worth, not needing to correct every error. It is the clarity of recognizing what is yours to carry and what belongs to others, and it is the humility to leave those burdens where they belong. To find peace, one must let go of the illusion of control. This is not apathy or indifference, but a higher kind of attentiveness. It means turning inward, not in selfishness, but in stewardship. It means tending to your own soul with the same intensity you once used to fix others. It means asking not how can they be better, but how can I be more faithful, more patient, more grounded in what is true. It is a quiet return to the only thing you can truly influence, your own thoughts, actions, and character. There is a paradox in this kind of peace. The more you release your grip on others, the more room they have to grow. The less you demand their change, the more freely you can love them. Not as projects to be completed, but as people to be understood. And when you are no longer consumed with managing outcomes, you become available to live your life fully. You find beauty in the present moment, courage in the face of discomfort, and joy in simple obedience to what is good. Peace cannot be hunted down in the world outside. It is not waiting for things to go your way or for people to become easier to deal with. It waits in the quiet center of a person who has chosen not to be ruled by things beyond their control. It grows in those who no longer chase the illusion of mastery, but instead anchor themselves in truth. Only then can peace become something durable, something that no storm can shake. Time is one of the most overlooked treasures a person possesses. It slips by quietly, never announcing its passing, never returning once it is gone. Every second spent is spent forever. There is no reclaiming it, no storing it for later, no bargaining for more. And yet, despite its immense value, it is often squandered, not through wild, obvious wastefulness, but through subtle distractions, misplaced attention, and a constant fixation on other people's lives. We spend hours watching, analyzing, comparing, reacting to what others are doing, all while neglecting the sacred work of becoming who we are meant to be. To focus on others is easier. It is more immediate, more entertaining. The mind finds comfort in distraction because it delays the harder, quieter work of self-development. But each moment spent obsessing over someone else's path is a moment lost from our own. There is a cost to that habit. It is not just time we lose, but depth, focus, clarity. The ability to pour ourselves fully into what we have been given fades when our attention is scattered across other people's decisions, appearances, or journeys. What we call keeping up is often just falling behind. Behind in self-awarenessness, behind in discipline, behind in purpose. Your life is not a performance to be constantly measured against the lives around you. It is a calling, a task, a story written in time with pages only you can fill. The time you've been given was not assigned at random. It is a specific invitation to do a specific work in a specific place and season. But you cannot accept that invitation if your eyes are always elsewhere. The person who devotes their attention to the lives of others ends up a stranger to their own. They know everything about what everyone else is doing, but little about who they are becoming. That kind of life may be full of information, but it is empty of transformation. Focusing on yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of responsibility. There is work to do that no one else can do for you. Character to build, discipline to cultivate, wounds to heal, dreams to pursue, and none of these things will be accomplished by proxy. They require your presence, your effort, your intentional use of the limited time you have. To give your time to those tasks is to honor the gift of your life. To give it away to endless distraction is to slowly forfeit the person you were meant to become. In a world driven by noise and visibility, it is tempting to believe that time spent privately developing yourself is less important than staying informed about what others are doing. But the opposite is true. The quiet time invested in thought, in learning, in building strength of character, in reflection and growth, those are the hours that shape you. They do not draw attention, but they form the core of a life that can stand firm. They teach you to walk steadily even when others rush past, to stay grounded even when others seem to soar. You do not have unlimited time. You cannot afford to live someone else's story while your own waits in silence. The days you are given are not rehearsal, they are the stage. Every hour is a thread in the fabric of your becoming. What you choose to focus on will determine the pattern, the structure, the strength of that fabric. And if you spend too long staring at someone else's tapestry, yours will remain unfinished, a life half-lived, a calling half-heard. There is a kind of dignity that comes from honoring your time, not rushing, not hoarding, but treating each moment as something holy, something purposeful. When you do that, you find that even in the smallest task, even in the quietest growth, there is meaning, not because others see it, but because it is yours. And that is where real power lies, not in the applause of others, but in the integrity of a life focused on what truly matters. The path to self-mastery is not carved in grand achievements or sudden revelations, but in the quiet, daily choice to keep walking forward. Often unseen, often misunderstood, those who learn to focus on their own journey rather than the scattered noise of others begin to build a kind of strength that is not easily shaken. It is not the kind that shouts or performs, but the kind that endures, the kind that deepens with time. This strength is not born from comparison, but from consistency, from a loyalty to one's inner work, even when the world is busy celebrating surface things. When a person ceases to measure their progress by what others are doing, a remarkable freedom emerges. No longer enslaved to others' timelines, trends, or opinions, they are finally able to listen for the deeper call, the one that leads them toward what is true, what is difficult, what is worth their full devotion. This kind of growth is not glamorous. It is not marked by flashing signs of success. It is steady, grounded, and often invisible to the world. But it is real, and in time it produces a kind of character that cannot be faked, a kind of wisdom that is hard-won, a kind of peace that is unbothered by noise. Focusing on others will often seduce you into speed, into rushing toward things that look impressive but leave you empty. But the person who is content to grow slowly, deliberately, with eyes fixed on what is theirs to do, learns the art of depth. They are not dazzled by quick success or envious of those who seem ahead. They understand that roots must grow deep if the tree is to withstand the storm. So they keep showing up, keep building, keep refining the small hidden parts of themselves. And in that process, they become strong. Not because they have conquered others, but because they have conquered themselves. There is something sacred about staying in your lane. It does not mean ignoring others or walking in pride. It means knowing where your responsibilities begin and where they end. It means refusing to be pulled in every direction by other people's drama, demands, or dreams. It means creating boundaries, not to push people away, but to preserve the energy and attention needed for the things that truly matter. In that space of focus, growth is not only possible, it is inevitable. The person who is faithful to their path, who tends to it with patience and humility, begins to transform, slowly and profoundly. And strength gained in solitude is not a weakness, it is not an accident. It is forged in discipline, in quiet victories over distraction, in the refusal to abandon what matters most just because it is hard or unrecognized. It comes from doing the inner work, asking difficult questions, facing uncomfortable truths, making decisions that others may not understand. And because it is not built for applause, it does not crumble when applause is withheld. It remains, it grows, it carries you forward, even when the path is long and the end is not in sight. The one who focuses on themselves rather than others learns how to endure. They learn how to build something lasting, whether a relationship, a calling, or a soul. They learn the difference between attention and authenticity, between noise and meaning. And because they have walked steadily, with eyes fixed on what truly matters, they become a quiet force in the world, unmoved by trends, unafraid of obscurity, unwilling to trade integrity for approval. This is the strength the world does not always recognize, but desperately needs. Not flashy, but faithful. Not loud, but lasting. Not perfect, but progressing, always progressing. In the end, the call to focus on yourself and not on others is not a retreat from love or a withdrawal from the world. It is a return to where all real change begins. It is a turning inward, not in pride, but in purpose. The noise of comparison, judgment, and distraction will always be loud, always tempting, always ready to pull you away from your path. But the person who learns to quiet that noise, who learns to guard their time, their peace, and their attention, will find something infinitely more valuable than fleeting validation. They will find clarity. They will find strength. They will find the slow, steady transformation of becoming the person they were always meant to be. And in that becoming, they will not only change themselves, they will become a light for others, not by trying to fix them, but by living a life so whole, so rooted, so focused, that it invites others to do the same.